you think little big ones get up to? Ethel Donnelly knows, as she washes the kit for the Arsenal.
You see, this is the problem. To stop the red running into the white, I have to use a low temperature, which never got the kit really clean until I changed to Ariel Automatic.
See what happens when we compare Ethel's old powder with Ariel. It's the difference between nearly clean and really clean.
Now take a look at the results. The sleeves are brilliant white. The Ariel is so great. I mean, if my washing wasn't completely clean, the flares would soon tell me. Upon the powder I use.
Ariel, not just nearly clean, but really clean.
Impressions from Impulse, the all-over perfume body spray. So irresistibly romantic, men just can't help acting on it. When a man you've never met before suddenly gives you flowers, that's Impressions from Impulse.
In the recent What Car Awards, the Renault 21 GTS won Best Family Saloon, the Renault 21 Savannah won Best Estate and Car of the Year.
Almost 3 square meters of glass all round. These doors.
2-litre fuel injection.
7 seats. 4 inches wider than ours.
Some serious thinking to do.
Renault 21, bad news for the competition, good news for you.
When I have nothing planned,
Well, you've been stood up then, Barry.
I often enjoy some Kentucky Fried Chicken and chips and my own company.
Hi, Barry. How's it going?
Oh, chicken looks great.
Kentucky Fried Chicken.
Hello, Barry.
Just not my day, is it?
Good food attracts good company.
Don't panic, lad. Don't panic.
Oh, that's blown it. Relax, Alfie. Have a Ritz cheese sandwich.
2 Ritz crackers with a smooth real cheese filling make a Ritz cheese sandwich just what you want to fill that hole.
Mind if I have another? Not now, Alfie. Filling out the... Yes, Alfie.
And nothing fills a hole like a Ritz cheese sandwich.
Timotei shampoo. So mild, you can wash your hair as often as you wish. Containing natural herb extracts, Timotei always leaves your hair soft and shining, with the fresh smell of summer meadows. Timotei, so mild, you can wash your hair as often as you wish.
Like Provo, the Diggers were resolutely without leaders. One of their non-leaders was writer Peter Berg.
The Diggers had several goals. One was the immediate one, to simply act out free. Put free in front of any word you could think of. Free phone box, free lunch, free district attorney, free judge, free policeman, free boy, free girl, whatever, especially free love. Love being the word that had been foisted on Haight-Ashbury. And the long-term goal was to create a bomb, people that were refugees from America and Western civilization would be able to re-see.
The Beatles served that function. The great international obviously indicated, given the lyrics of their music and the sensibilities that it expressed, that something was going on.
It's getting better all at my school.
7 was a remarkable year because
the solitary individual consciousness that had been developed by many individual people over the previous decade, from the mid-50s, seemed finally to come together in a kind of be-in together, as we had in San Francisco, in which it was no hyper-rational purpose. It was a community project just to be there together, to share each other's company, everybody spending the time together, as the Beatles were spending time together as a community group, the four of them, and giving an example to youth around the world that guys can be friends.
It was a beautiful event, The Human Being. There was like 10,000 people there that came from God knows where. It was like this calling, like a conch shell blowing, hey, from an ancient time. Come out, come back, reappear, all you gods and goddesses, you divine people, home, come. And the people came. Turn on, tune in, and drop out.
Dr. Timothy Leary, a psychologist who had been fired from Harvard University, was undoubtedly the most internationally conspicuous prophet of the psychedelic revolution.
I mean, drop out of high school, drop out of college, drop out of graduate school, drop out of junior executive, drop out of senior executive, turn on, tune in, drop out.
To me, is that it was a demonstration on the part of the baby boom generation of their numbers, of their strength, of their clout, of their power, which is just straight quantity numbers. There were 76 million Americans born between the years 46 and 64. They were trained by Dr. Spock to be demand-fed. They were the first consumer species. They were the first. An American and young meant that you deserve the world. So the Be-In and the Summer of Love and the subsequent events all are part of this profound historic generational change.
San Francisco's Be-In, the gathering of the tribes, set the style for a whole wave of love-ins, be-ins, freak-outs, solstice celebrations. In the Summer of Love, California led the way. Messengers went out to spread the word, like Chet Helms.
I bring you greetings from the tribes of the North. I'd like to say as well that about 4 weeks ago, I spent some time in New York, and I spent some time in happening all over.
I really wish the people that look with anger at the happenings of the psychedelic freakout would be unbiased about it, because they really don't realize that what these people are talking about is something that they really want themselves. It's something that everyone wants. You know, it's personal freedom to be able to talk and be able to say. It's dead straight. It's a real sort of basic pleasure for everyone, but it looks weird. But it isn't.
People like to live in a cozy rut, which, again, you know, we were all quite happy in our little ruts right up until, I think, 1966, when this experience happened.
Until October 1966, possession of LSD had not been a criminal offense. Since World War II, doctors had conducted experiments into the therapeutic potential of the drug. But beyond medicine, some of the guinea pigs were saying they'd had a good time, and LSD was spreading to home and college.
Well, what's so great about it?
Down. I hope this isn't being recorded. Is it?
Yeah.
Go
ahead.
No.
Well, gee.
No, it's just that you asking it to be described, it really, whatever it is, you know, good or bad, it really just can't be described. It's something that has to be experienced. and it's a completely individual thing.
So next time you see the word psychedelic, you know, freak out music and all of that, look at it straight and think, well, psychedelic, now what does it mean? And then somebody might explain, you know.
One pill makes you larger, and one pill makes you small, and the ones that mother gives you don't do anything at all. Go ask when she's hungry before. And if you go chasing rabbits, and you know you're going to fall, tell 'em a hookah, smoking caterpillar has given you a call. For Alice, when she was just small. When the men on the chessboard get up and tell you, and you just had some kind of mushroom, and your mind is moving, so I think you'll know. Portion have fallen sloppy dead. White night is walking backwards, and the red queen's on with her head. Remember what the dog said. Feed your head, feed your
As Robin Williams says, if you can remember the 60s, you weren't really there. And that sort of almost sums it up. People normally didn't get on stage while high on acid playing unless by accident, which was usually enjoyable, but I don't think it made for a lot of real heavy music, as they say. Generally, I think it was more the style and texture of music that came out of a culture similar. Like, you don't play on it very much. I mean, your strings get this big. So it's not really conducive to acting, functioning together with other people in the right key and all that. Because people just wander off at other keys and then something else happening over here.
That was one of the wheels of John Lennon's Rolls. It's a gas. If you're over 80, that means it's Fan. £6,000 worth of 1965 Phantom, inside almost as marvelous as out.
I was in John Lennon's Rolls, the pretty gypsy. I heard him say, and I didn't know what he meant, I don't often have acid for breakfast. I thought, it sounds awful. It's sort of like a man who'd had bad food, isn't it? Bacon, and it was an acid stomach, you know. And what a funny thing to say. And then he said, and to celebrate, I'm going to play you this. And he said, listen, what do you think? Really, we felt liberated by the experience of taking LSD, and that's why it's hard to see it lumped with addictive drugs and other things. Because I think if you were doing it all the time, it would be a madhouse. You couldn't raise children or do a job, but to have a good look at the other realities, the other verities, other than those structures of, you know, I'm 42 and I should be 42, I think it was helpful. It set me free, and it set Joan free, and I'm grateful we took it together. I wouldn't like to have sort of been out there on my own in bad company. It's Dr. Leary, who was also somewhat of a leader, was very keen on set and setting, as he called it. You should be in a good frame of mind, and you shouldn't be sort of on Reading Station, you know, the load. Took it. You should be sitting in a field with the Archbishop of Canterbury, and then you feel all right.
Well, if you couldn't manage to be in the company of the Archbishop of Canterbury, fairly readily come across Dr. Timothy Leary. On this occasion, addressing a convocation of Students' Union presidents, Dr. Leary took as his text Sergeant Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band, in which he found for him a not wholly unexpected significance.
Now, the message that I read into this album is surprisingly enough a familiar one. Turn on, tune in, and drop out.
Being kind of goofy, because at the same time we had Johnson running the country, sending 500,000 troops to Vietnam. We stopped that, and we had J. Edgar Hoover, total madman, running our secret police. Great, but I don't want to be held responsible for the day-to-day quotes, because literally we were out there in the front lines just making it up as we went along, and I give us this credit. We were willing to take risks. We were willing to be holy fools. We were willing to make asses of ourselves. But let's not hang these portraits of ourselves, making fools of ourselves, on the walls of the Smithsonian Institute.
There were many people, including Timothy Leary, who thought that the psychedelic drugs, and that was the image of the Garden of Eden, of course, in rock and roll, and even to some extent in Sergeant Pepper, though there was a slightly charming, cynical wit about that. However, as Kerouac said when he first took magic mushrooms, the son of Simon, walking on water wasn't built in a day.
Timothy Leary's famous slogan, turn on, tune in, and drop out, got a lot of people in hot water. Of us in the Haight-Ashbury had more or less done that. But to become a national figurehead, saying in the media, turn on, tune in, and drop out, had certain ramifications. For instance, how do you stay alive after you've done that? Now, at that time, I was not a kid. I was not an old man, certainly, but I was not a kid, and I had been around, and I could take care of myself to a certain degree. But that slogan was heard by 13 and 14-year-olds living in the hinterlands of America, and they came running to meccas like San Francisco looking for this paradise. And
the most unfortunate thing that ever happened to this cat was that his... Fido says, when the taste makes all the difference, enjoy a long life.
The next 30 minutes of music are brought to you by U.S. Cotton, who'd like to remind you that...
Well, I know.
Hello, Mom, I'm back.
Hello, Pat. How's college?
Oh, it's a doddle. That smells good. I'm starving. All right, you.
When it comes to the whole family's wash, Persil Automatic in your machine guarantees outstanding results. Wash after wash.
Right. There, you find that stuff.
Stuff? What stuff?
Well, I left a few things.
Oh, that was yours.
Aye.
filthy. I thought it was to be thrown out.
Hey? Are you joking? Well, that was all me stuff, me kits, everything. Mom.
Oh, well. Lucky I washed it then, isn't it?
Brute. It makes me feel like a new man.
Three number ones on one album. Madonna's True Blue.
3 major credit cards in one. Around the globe, Access puts you in control.
Of Wales really love the world's most photographed woman, about her 6 years of marriage, her influence on our future king. All this week, The Express brings you the exclusive inside story from Britain's leading royal watcher. Don't miss it. And win a £35,000 school fees plan for your child's private education from Save and Prosper. And there are 100 Slazenger rackets to be won as Jimmy Connors tells his stormy life story. Have we got news for you?
Now look what you've done.
Hold on, I'll get him. There aren't any sharks in here, are there?
No.
Crocodiles ate all the sharks.
Australians wouldn't give a Castlemaine 4X for anything else.
Patricia Rexroad, USA.
Greg Bredman, Australia. Berlin Murray, Jamaica.
Peter Knapp, Schweiz.
Алексей Миронов, Советский Союз.
Augusto Cabrera, Argentina.
John O'Cooley, Ghana. Joseph Kamara, South Africa. Francis Lagache, France. Ирина Краснова, Советский Союз. Лили Буанга, Cameroon. Susanna Gunnar, Hawaii.
Leo Fabi, Italia.
Amélia Nascimento, Brasil. Barbara Harris, England. Saúde. Conchita González, México.
Darko Petrovic, Československo.
Miguel Lazo, Perú. Paola Fiori, Italia. Shakuntala, India.
If there's something you want that a NatWest loan can help you get, press for action.
Riding along in my automobile. This old house this old house this old house sitting in the sun waiting for the senorita to show. I can find a hell I'll be gone when the morning comes. We are sailing. We are sailing. Our house in the middle of whatever you want, whatever you like.
Last year, over 700,000 people got a loan from NatWest. Whatever you want from NatWest, press for action.
Once, Sony made the Walkman. It was soon followed by wave upon wave of other would-be Walkmen, until there were as many copies as there are pebbles on a beach. Now, Sony has made a Walkman that needs no batteries, and even works in the sea. Where does that leave all those would-be Walkmen?
Welcome to bonny Scotland, land of scientific geniuses like Alexander Graham Bell, inventor of the telephone, and John Logie Baird, inventor of what you're watching me on now. And I say technological genius because it is here in this typical Scottish glen that the dynamic, compact computer corporation are building this factory to satisfy your insatiable appetite for their high-performance personal computers. Yes, here in Scotland, home of the brave, land of the free.
Crave a little flavor, splash a little splash. It's a with the fizzy soda stream. That's fizzy.
Eddie. What? After your little contretemps with Saturn, Colonel Dare?
That's a bit below the belt. We missed that asteroid by inches.
Unlike Saturn, Colonel Dare. Schipperheiser.
Space Hog! It's that infernal up to his dirty tricks.
He should use Mobile Diesel Plus.
Rather.
With a special cleaning formula. It helps you stop smoking, you know.
Filthy habit.
And less smoke, remember, means better fuel economy.
So Mobile Diesel means diesel going further. Eh?
Spot on, sir.
Come on, Mekon. Show a bit more leg.
Reddish flame.
What's the truth behind the world's most photographed woman? About her 6 years of marriage, her influence on our future king. All this week, The Express brings you the exclusive inside story from Britain's leading royal watcher. Don't miss it. And win a £35,000 school education from Save and Prosper. And there are 100 Slazenger rackets to be won as Jimmy Connors tells his stormy life story. The New Look Daily Express. Have we got news for you?
I thought I knew how good Everest double glazing was, but I didn't. I didn't know about this amazing Solar Plus glass. It actually reflects heat back inside your room, and it's fitted as standard. I didn't know that Everest doors lock in 3 different places. How's that for security? And these patio doors. Everest fit them with toughened safety glass as standard. I didn't know that either. But I do now. If you want to know more, ring now for a free quotation. You only fit double glazing once, so fit the best. Everest.
France, now to Paris weekdays from Stanford, as well as Heathrow.
Well, they've certainly made an impression on...
Some people will always trust their sense of taste. Some people will always buy Krona margarine. Try Krona on your sense of taste.
All children suffer from little aches, pains, and feverishness. Junior Dispral paracetamol can help. For children up to 12, it's in soluble tablet form, taken in water or a favorite drink. There's pleasant-tasting Junior Dispral suspension, easy to pour and sugar-free. For children's aches, pains, and feverishness, Junior Dispral paracetamol, sugar-free suspension and soluble tablets.
This is Thames from London. In 5 minutes, the latest national news from the studios of ITN. The time is 10 o'clock. There now follows a party election broadcast by the...
No,
No. When it comes to education, this is the government that likes to say no.
No, you're not good enough. No, you can't come to this school. Your parents can't afford it.
No, we're not exaggerating. This is what Mrs. Thatcher plans for your children's future. Privileged schools, selective schools, education. Because the Tories have been shutting doors on our children's future for 8 years.
No nursery schools for you. No, you two. It's not your turn for the book. No. Class cancelled. There's no teacher for physics this term.
Teachers and parents know from bitter experience how little Mrs. Thatcher cares about their children's education.
Parents' fundraising events are having to raise money for essentials quite often, rather than the extras, which is, what it should be all about.
The Tories are spending 20% less on children's books than when Mrs. Thatcher came to power.
You've got people in mobile huts, which are meant to be temporary but stay for a long time. You've got cloud decoration.
1 in 5 schools is overcrowded. But then that's a problem that doesn't affect the Conservative Education Secretary and his children to private schools.
I think it's strange that he can see the benefit of small classes in the private sector, and yet he isn't prepared to acknowledge that in the state sector.
Our schools are short of 1,000 physics teachers. Maths and other sciences also face crippling shortages.
One of my children is being taught by a teacher who has no qualification in the subject. And my son is now coming up for examinations in 1 year's time, and I am very concerned that he's not getting the standard of education which I really should expect from my child.
And Mrs. Thatcher's response to the crisis in the schools? Not a penny more for the books and equipment your children need. No, she says to parents. You'll have to pay.
No, I don't think the government cares at all about the comprehensive system. In fact, they'd like to destroy it because they don't believe in free education for everybody, even an equal education.
Mrs. Thatcher has no commitment to the future of the 93% of our children in state schools in Britain. Labour believes in them. We will open the door to a high-quality education for all our children, whether their parents can afford to pay or not. We will provide nursery education for all our 3- and 4-year-olds so that they get the best start in life. Labour will create real opportunity by providing the books, the equipment and the teachers that schools need. Labour will open the door to excellence. It will make classes smaller and science teaching and introduce new educational grants for 16-year-olds. Neil Kinnock knows about state education. His wife is a teacher. Neil Kinnock and the Labour Party want to make sure that being on the threshold of life means just that. Not a dead end, but a beginning.
Today's Tories want to reintroduce the past, whilst we are determined to help people to accept the realities of the future. The basic choice in this election, past or future. That process of equipment will take, and we'll do it because we know that costly though investment in education is, it is still much cheaper than ignorance. That's why we'll be doing it.
It's a party election broadcast by the Labour Party. This is Thames from London in 30 minutes, Campaign 87. First, though, the national news at the studios of ITN. London in 30 minutes, Campaign 87. First, though, the national news at the studios of ITN.
Foreign Secretary says Iran's charges. Bombed in his helicopter, Lebanon's Prime Minister dies. Wholly owned by the unions. Dr. Owen says the Tories will lose because of Mrs. Thatcher. The House says benches. Good evening. The Foreign Secretary, Sir Geoffrey Howe, says he'll act unless Iran comes up with a full explanation and apology over the treatment of Mr. Edward Chaplin, the senior British diplomat in Iran. Sir Geoffrey said Iran's complaint was trumped up. He emphasized any deal with the Iranians. Mr. Chaplin was beaten up and kidnapped by 6 armed men in Tehran last week before being released. The Iranians say he may face charges, including corruption and drugs offences, which carry the death penalty. An Iranian vice-consul who was arrested in Manchester on shoplifting charges and given bail had his passport returned to him. The Iranian embassy said he'd been tortured by the Manchester police.
In Tehran, British diplomat Edward Chaplin is safe on embassy territory and has not yet been officially charged. As a full-ranking diplomat, any such charges would be easy. The office is convinced the pressure on Mr. Chaplin is in retaliation for the shoplifting charges against the Iranian vice-consul in Manchester, who, as a lower-grade diplomat, has no immunity from prosecution. Mrs. Thatcher criticised the Iranian action this morning.
We shall keep up pressure in Tehran. The charges against Mr. Chaplin we think are outrageous. The matter here is totally unconnected with that. The matter here is a matter for the police.
On May the 9th, Ahmed Ghazemi is reported to have been arrested in Manchester for shoplifting, charged and... He had failed to answer his bail and was reportedly arrested again. A magistrate granted bail but said he must forfeit his passport. 45 minutes later, that passport restriction was rescinded. In the Vienna Convention on Consular Relations, Article 43 grants immunity from prosecution only in respect of acts performed in the exercise of consular functions. Mr. Ghazemi was shopping and was not immune. But Article 41 says consular officers shall not be liable to arrest crime. This afternoon, the Iranian embassy in London issued a statement insisting the arrest of their consular official by Manchester police was illegal. I asked an expert if they had a point.
They may have a point, yes. It's a minor illegality in that, as I understand it, he was evading, and he's under a duty to appear before the court. He must be allowed bail, and no restriction on his freedom of movement. And I think that's why they gave the passport back, because they realized that that was probably a breach of Article 41 of the Convention.
The Iranian chargé d'affaires may well advise his vice-consul to leave the country, which could end the whole diplomatic incident. Would the government try to stop the Iranian leaving?
The responsibility for seeing that he answers his bail rests with the court and police and the prosecuting authorities. We have no intervention with or responsibility for the control of those authorities at all. And it's for that reason, I say, without any qualification whatsoever, there is no deal of any kind.
The Foreign Office would like the issue defused, but it's up to the Iranians to do it.
There are fears tonight that Lebanon could be plunged into a new period of civil war. Muslim Prime Minister Mr. Rashid Karami. Mr. Karami was killed when a bomb exploded by army helicopter from Tripoli to Beirut. A previously unknown group, the secret Lebanese army, said it did it.
The bomb exploded behind, mortally wounding him. But the pilot, his aircraft holed, and with other casualties aboard, including the Interior Minister, somehow managed to crash land. The Army helicopter belly flopped on a military airstrip in the Christian sector. Ironically, the murdered Prime Minister believed flying was safer than driving through areas under Christian militia control where his enemies were numerous. Though alive when pulled out of the helicopter, surgery failed to revive the politician, whose death it feared could now spark off fresh sectarian violence. Lebanese leader to be assassinated since civil war erupted in 1975. The Lebanese government has been virtually paralyzed. The late Prime Minister at odds with the presidency. The crisis boiled over last month when Karami resigned because of government failure to solve the political deadlock. Karami also came into conflict with the president when he helped initiate renewed Syrian intervention in West Beirut last February to stop militia battles tearing the capital apart. No group has claimed the killing, but already Lebanon's Muslim warlords like Walid Jumblat are speaking of vengeance. As they prepare to bury one of the Muslims' most influential power brokers, it's reported that the Lebanese army has been put on full alert. The government, in the wake of the killing, now tackling both the constitutional crisis and bracing for the backlash. Brent Sadler, News at 10 in the Middle East.
Campaign, the Conservative Party chairman, Mr. Tebbit, said tonight a Labour government would mean a return to picket line violence. He called Labour a wholly owned subsidiary of the TUC, and he said Mr. Kinnock would have everything they asked for.
In 40 actions, the Alliance, as he mounted his fiercest and most sustained attack yet on Labour. Much of the speech was about the laws governing the Mr. Tebbit said were facing the voters.
The first choice that must be made is between a Conservative government committed to uphold the democratic rights of trades unionists within their unions, a government pledged to restore to the union barons the powers which they wielded so ruthlessly before 1979. It's back to secondary picketing. It's back to violence on the picket lines.
Mr. Tebbit said Labour's glossily packaged policies were spilling out in disarray. The wealth to provide the services they were promising.
The Labour Party is, as always, long on promises and short on cash. The promises have never been more rash. The bribes have never been more expensive than at this election.
Mr. Tebbit said Labour should come clean on their plans for borrowing and taxation. What, he asked, had they got to hide except their record?
At the rally tonight, the SDP leader Dr. Owen listed what he called the failings of Mrs. Thatcher. He said, above all else, she had created a blighted generation. He said the failings would ensure she lost the election. Steele called the Conservative cabinet boot boys kicking in the windows of the welfare state.
The two alliance leaders together in Oxford tonight continued their attack on the Prime Minister. Dr. Owen said Oxford University had delivered its education by refusing to grant Mrs. Thatcher an honorary doctorate.
The refusal of this university to grant an honorary doctorate to the Prime Minister of the day and a former graduate was a calculated insult.
According to David Steele, only the alliance of vested interest.
We're faced, as we come into the closing stages of the election, on one side with the Conservative Party, if returned to office, ready to encourage and the city. On the other side, the Labour Party, ready to pay back the trade union paymasters if they way out.
While Mr. Steele was speaking, Dr. Owen was making to settle a minor crisis outside the town hall, where 300 angry people who'd been turned away from the packed meeting. A repeat of his earlier speech solved that problem. The leader chose a visit to a centre for the unemployed on Teesside to the minister's record on unemployment. He branded Mrs. Thatcher a sorcerer's apprentice, cooking the books to disguise the real total out of work.
Apart from Spain and Ireland, Britain has got the worst record in terms of dealing with unemployment of any of the Western industrialized nations. It's quite... They try and pretend that they have got a good record. They haven't, and they're cooking the books.
This was the stronger, more direct attack Alliance supporters had wanted, and was repeated tonight by David Steele using the roof of his battle bus to address crowds in Oxford.
Paul Davis, News at 10 on the Alliance campaign.
Education was the first Liberal priority of the day, a Birmingham comprehensive school, and from the teachers there, a taste of the feeling in the classrooms.
We are totally fed up. Yes. Most teachers are of low salary. There's no money for books, no money for equipment, and we're just carrying on, struggling on, yet somehow still managing to produce reasonable results.
Mr. Steele's pledged to set up a central pay body to monitor salaries and to spend an extra £2 billion a year on education. To health then and Kidderminster Hospital, coping, say surgeons, with 3 times the number of emergencies, but the same number of beds it had 10 years ago.
We hope you'll have some say on how much money goes to the health service.
From Mr. Steele, an alliance commitment and government condemnation.
I believe that at heart, even the better off in our society, even those paying substantial amounts of income tax, do not want to see the fabric of our welfare state kicked in the way that is happening at the present time.
And tonight, with David Owen recording Friday's Face the Kids for Channel 4, the million-dollar question, what is the alliance?
Is that we talk plain common sense.
Michael Macmillan, News at 10 in the Midlands.
The Shadow Chancellor, Mr. Hattersley, said tonight that unemployment and the economic losses that went with it were costing every family in Britain £30 a week. Mr. Kinnock said Mrs. Thatcher had put much of manufacturing industry out of business in the past 8 years. The government, he said, had turned Britain from a seller of goods into a buyer, from a making economy to a taking economy.
The Labour leader set out today to try to seize the economic high ground of the campaign and put seat of any future attempt to rebuild industry whilst generating new jobs. Visiting a construction company in the highly marginal East Midlands, he castigated the Tories for mismanaging the economy, adding that Mrs. Thatcher's style itself was bound to be a factor.
Record of the Conservative government over the last 8 years, doing it again this morning, and of course that's absolutely legitimate. We're also giving attention to the style of government, the system of government that's been operated under Mrs. Thatcher. Not entirely her fault, largely the fault of the doormats that she surrounded herself with.
Later, after Mr. Kinnock had tried his hand at capping bottles of Windoline, he stressed that a Labour government would follow the protecting domestic production and would establish an investment bank to capture capital currently leaving Britain so that it could be invested in rebuilding industry here. Tonight, speaking in Chatham, the Shadow Chancellor, Roy Hattersley, urged Mrs. Thatcher to tell the...
Mrs. Thatcher is going to start talking about the economy this week, and about time too. I hope she'll tell us that the output of British manufacturing industry is now lower than it was 8 years ago, that investment in industry is less than it was 8 years ago, and that Labour's £5 billion surplus on manufactured trade is to be converted into a Tory deficit of £8 billion.
It was at the same time how he was asked, could Britain stay in NATO and abandon nuclear weapons?
And wouldn't be in any way alone. In fact, we'd be the 9th member of NATO not to accommodate nuclear weapons, not to possess nuclear weapons.
But they don't repudiate the nuclear deterrent.
All right, look, NATO is a nuclear alliance.
That's right, which you belong to.
Yes, and we will continue to belong to and be extremely loyal and very important members of that alliance.
Under the American umbrella.
Yes, we will continue to be members of that alliance.
Under the American umbrella.
And what we have said is that we will be trying to secure a change of strategy within that alliance from first use and from flexible response. Now, we've been upstaged. We've been upstaged by the President of the United States. First use debate, not flexible response debate, but the clearing of Europe.
It was suggested to him that he did not have any experience of office to prepare him.
We have a government now that's been in office for 8 years. They are massively experienced people. And look at the mess of itself. Is certainly no guarantee of suitability either for gaining office or for continuation in office. And it is precisely their experience contribution to their defeat on June the 11th.
Mrs. Thatcher flew to a state secondary school in Kent, one of the many which have been affected by teacher strikes. The children had nearly all been given Conservative Party hats and flags. Mrs. Thatcher saw nothing wrong in that. Tried her hand at bricklaying, helping to build a very small wall. And then she was off onto a paddle stick on school spending.
So there is more. How it is distributed and upon what is a matter for the local education authority, not the central government.
And to Mr. Kinnock's charge that under her government fewer people were producing fewer goods.
What does he want to do? Get rid of all machinery, all technology, and go back to doing things, the very thing that has brought increased prosperity, that has taken away the drudgery, that has taken away many.
The Education Secretary, Mr. Labour shadow cabinet as a bunch of sanctimonious hypocrites for opposing Conservative education plans.
Out of 21 members, 18 of them had the advantage of selective grammar school or of private school education. So 90% of Labour shadow cabinet benefited from a system which they now want to deny to everybody else. What a bunch of sanctimonious hypocrites. What humbug. Their policy is pull up the ladder, Jack. I'm all right.
Mr. John Biffin, the former leader of the House of Commons, has said he would enjoy life if he was on the back benches after the election. His comments follow rumours that Mrs. Thatcher will not reappoint him to her cabinet if she wins a third term.
Mr. Low profile. Earlier today, for instance, he was out shopping for household essentials.
Tell me, do you sell toothpaste?
Before going out to meet the voters in the streets of the West Midlands. He's been noticeable by his absence from London cabinet lineups, and today received a very restrained vote of confidence from his leader.
He's a very lively, ebullient personality, very original mode of thought.
Meanwhile, Mr. Biffin was steadfastly refusing to add further to his remarks about leaving cabinet on his feet rather than his knees. He addressed himself instead to some farmers, with only the occasional onlooker noting his presence. He was not upset, he said, by reports of dismissal.
I'm unmoved by many of the things that the media suggest. I stand before you an immensely cheerful and contented politician.
You do go back to the back benches?
In my life I had a thoroughly enjoyable time on the back benches, and I certainly would expect to enjoy myself likewise for the future.
Mr. Biffin says he's determined, if necessary, to show there's life in Parliament after...
The opinion poll taken by Marplan today for tomorrow's Today newspaper suggests the Conservatives and the Alliance are improving at Labour's expense. A different trend from some of the polls on Sunday. 44, that's up 2 on the similar poll last week. Labour 33, Alliance 21.
The northwest of England, high unemployment and a large number of marginal seats is emerging as a key battleground in the election. In the last Parliament, the Conservatives held 36 seats in the region and Labour 35. The Alliance, who held just from local election results.
The key to who governs next is here in the June. In the last election, the 73 seats were evenly divided between Labour and Conservatives. The Alliance took 2. But this time, Labour's offensive is critical. If it can't deliver in this industrial heartland, it's lost the country. This is how the Northwest is remembered. Lancashire's favourite daughter, and a traditional working class looking to Labour to improve its slender pickings. And this is how one of its favourite sons painted it. Lowry's factories and mills, the powerhouse of the empire, overflowing with work. Today's derelict mills and empty factories are evidence that the Northwest has suffered more casualties than most in Britain's shrinking industrial base. 14% unemployment across the region, and in some areas, Liverpool in particular, 1 in 5 are out of work. Labour is in jobs. Leyland convener Derek Bullen points to 8,000 job losses in 8 years. He says there's more to come.
My view is that it's getting more depressed. The manufacturing in general, which has been one of the basic industries of this area, has been on the decline for some considerable time. And as a result of the changes to our company, that'll happen again next year. And there's been no investment at all. in manufacturing.
Labour is targeting on 20 marginals. These are their best. Large Tory majorities, often from third place. The recent local elections hopes to add 6 new seats to the 2 they already have. The Tories are clinging to some slender majorities, wafer thin at Hyndburn, and in others a minister and a party vice-chairman are at risk. The Tories will promote the new wealth that's been generated here, often by government sponsorship like these enterprise zones. Smaller industries than people, but then that's a national trend. It's a story told at Camel Laird's in Birkenhead. 10,000 jobs lost, the ship. Now they're building HMS Campbelltown for the Navy as well as the new submarines, and are even beginning to recruit more men. Textiles, another of the region's traditional industries, is also on the mend in a small way. This company recently bought £4 million worth of... Because of that, today its order books from home and abroad are full. And so, says the manager,
we as a company have grown together, and over the last 12 months, new opportunities have opened all over the place, not least in export, of course. A lot of our fabric is now being exported, again aided by in the UK.
Are you employing more people?
Yes, we've doubled our labour force in the last 5 years.
But is there the same optimism out in the marginals? The Alliance says no.
The haves now have more, and I'm quite sure that if you ask the haves, then they are bound to say that they are better off than they were before. I think if you ask the have-nots, however, you will find that they have lost out in the last 7 years.
Meanwhile, one traditional industry flourishes as ever, the Northern Club and the Northern Jokester.
Mrs. Thatcher, there's a policeman outside number 10 Downing Street, 24 hours a day, and she still gets out. Cyril Smith's been worried. He's that worried he's bought himself a water bed. Late Windermere.
Michael Nicholson, news at 10 in the Northwest.
President Reagan says he wants more medical checks on potential AIDS victims, but he's been booed by people who think differently. A report next. Plus, England expects every Test spectator to do his duty. And taking the cake on Sergeant Pepper's birthday. That's in a couple of minutes.
Are you sure?
Oui.
Good.
Lulu? Have you seen your...
She's just left.
I'm telling you, she's gone.
Lulu?
Oui, c'est moi.
Lulu.
Yes, my sister wants to know what to do with the money in our current account.
Yes.
Yes, we invest. Yes, we invested, Miss Jessup.
Yeah.
They invested.
Yes, Miss Jessup.
Yes, they invest this money.
Yes, and the money made on this money.
Yes.
This money.
This money.
This money.
This money is our money. Yes.
Yes.
This money is your money.
Miss Jessup, this money is your money.
Yes, the money made on your money is our money.
Yes.
Yes.
The money made in our money is your money.
Yes. Yes. Yes.
Yes.
Oh, yes.
With Nationwide's Flex account, you can now make interest on your money. And the more money you have in, the more interest you get. Nationwide, remember whose money it is.
Tired eyes,
Refreshing.
gritty eyes,
Soothing. Ultrex. What a sight for sore eyes.
Every year, the Schmidts, the Muller, drive to their holiday villas. The Schmidts' car is slow and rather noisy, so when they arrive, they'll need another holiday to get over this one. The Mullers drive a big, thirsty car, which is probably at a petrol station somewhere between Munich and Marbella. The Reinhardts drive an Audi 100, a car so aerodynamic that it's capable of 125 miles per hour. It slips along quietly for over 750 miles on one tank full of petrol. And the moral of the story is, if you want to get on the beach before the Germans, you'd better buy an Audi 100. Vorsprung durch Technik, as they say in Germany.
President Reagan has been facing some opposition in the United States to his plans for extra tests to prevent the spread of AIDS. He was booed when he made... Today, AIDS victims have been demonstrating outside the White House, but according to opinion polls, the new measures are likely to be welcomed by most Americans.
You can get it too!
They brought the word to the White House today, hundreds of gay activists protesting administration policies on AIDS. They accused President Reagan of not promoting AIDS educational programs. You should do what's been done in Britain, they said. Some 40 AIDS sufferers, together with relatives of people who died, blocked the road outside the White House in an attempt to seek arrest. The police, who'd been forewarned, had come prepared with surgical gloves to handle the victims, a precaution which earned the derision of the marchers. Last night, at a major fundraiser organized by Elizabeth, they heard President Reagan take a new hard line on AIDS testing, and many didn't like it.
I've also asked HHS to add the AIDS virus to the list of contagious diseases for which immigrants and aliens seeking permanent residence in the United States can be denied entry.
The booing continued as the president outlined new plans to test all federal prisoners, patients in military hospitals, even couples planning to get married. Despite the fact that some 75% of the American public are in favor of mandatory testing, civil rights and AIDS victims like these people are determined to block it in the courts using every means at their disposal. Ken Reese, News at 10 at the White House.
West Germany has agreed conditionally to Soviet proposals to scrap medium and shorter-range nuclear missiles in Europe. The decision follows 6 weeks of political wrangling between Chancellor Kohl and his coalition partners. But Bonn is still... 2 Pershing-1 missiles with American warheads should be excluded from any deal. In Moscow, West German Matthias Rust, the pilot detained after landing his plane in Red Square last week. The 19-year-old is said to be taking his stay in Lefortovo prison calmly. The Russians say more defense sackings could follow their failure. The Sri Lankan government says it will block Indian attempts to send supplies to Tamil civilians trapped by... Hundreds are said to have died since government troops began their latest offensive against Tamil rebels. India said today an unarmed convoy of supply ships would leave for Jaffna on Wednesday.
Here, Mr. John McCready has been elected Deputy General Secretary of the Civil and Public Services Association. Mr. McCready was originally voted General Secretary, but lost that job last year to Mr. John Ellis in a rerun ballot after original vote. Mr. Ellis has now delayed announcing results of voting for the Union. He said late ballot papers could change the results.
Cricket. New measures to stop violence at Edgbaston have been agreed by the test authorities. They include closed-circuit television and a ban on excessive drinking and pitch invasions between England and Pakistan at Old Trafford on Thursday.
Edgbaston took the cricket authorities by surprise. So today at Old Trafford, the pressure was on the game's administrators, ground representatives and the police to come up with new measures to stop it. They don't want to be rushed into panic measures such as alcohol bans and crowd segregation. Scenes like this, a ban on all banners and flags which could be used as weapons, and an end to pitch invasions. In future, culprits will be... Camera surveillance say the police has been the key to beating football hooligans. Now it will be used at the cricket.
I think that we've all learned something. Confident now, and that the cricketing public can feel reassured and have confidence that our grounds... Cricket grounds have a certain ambiance about them. It's, people are comparing football, and a lot of the joy of watching cricket is the openness of it. and we're determined to take all reasonable steps to restore that.
Pakistan embassy officials at the meeting were concerned the violence could have been raised.
Pakistan community that they should enjoy the test matches and calm down and take cricket in its true spirit.
Clearly the last thing cricket wants is to go down the same road as football, but if there is further trouble at test matches this summer, then the segregation of fans and a complete ban on alcohol become a real possibility. Mark Austin, ITN Sport, Old Trafford.
The England opener, Chris Broad, won't be playing in Thursday. Left thumb. Lancashire's Neil Fairbrother takes his place in the England party. In the Britannic Assurance County Championship, an unbeaten 101 for Northants against Kent. 13. And Peter Willey, 113 for Hampshire's Steve Andrew, a career best of 7 for 92 against Gloucestershire. And Worcester's Neil Radford, 7 for 51 against Essex.
The main news again. The Foreign Secretary says he's ready to take diplomatic action against Iran unless it quickly apologizes for the treatment of the British diplomat Edward Chaplin. He said charges against him were trumped up. In the election campaign, Mr. Tebbit said a Labour government would mean a return to picket line violence, and Mr. Kinnock said Mrs. Thatcher had put much of Britain's manufacturing industry out of business.
Finally, the former Beatle, Mr. Paul McCartney, went back to the Abbey Road recording studios in London today for a special birthday party. With a little help from some friends, he was celebrating the 20th anniversary of the Beatles' top-selling LP, Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts.
John, Paul, George and Ringo arrived at the studios in Abbey Road to record Sgt. Pepper, a landmark in the history of recorded music with over 20 million copies sold. Today, Paul McCartney celebrated and recalled the thinking behind it.
We were interested in what we thought were the right things, like peace, love, understanding. Same old subjects that are still with us today. You know, will Nelson Mandela be freed? We were talking about that 20 years ago. So, you know, in a way it feels the same, but hopefully, you know, these things are going to sort of actually change and we're not going to have to wait another 20 years to see some action. But if I had to pick one, I think I'd choose...
And that's it tonight. Good night.